In the last video, we went over customizing the user object with a one-to-one field to another model, specifically using a profile model. Again, that covers 90% of the cases when dealing with custom information for a user. However, there are instances where you might want to do a custom user model for your Django system. With that in mind, let's go ahead and see what it takes to set that up for your own project. We're going to start out basic, and we're going to have the same application that we did last time, except we're going to just fill in the gaps with the models and configuration that are needed. So if we look at our project directory, you see we have the registration app. We need to go ahead and open up our settings and add registration to the installed apps. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set the auth user model setting. This is by default set to auth.user, and you'll have to go ahead and add this generally to your settings. So I went ahead and added it, so all we need to do is edit it, and we'll change it to registration.demoUser. This is saying, hey, we're going to use the registration app model of demo user for our auth user in our system. Next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and see about creating that model. If we'll open up models.py in our registration app, we can get started with creating a new demo user class. And we want to inherit from the abstract base user, which comes from our Django contrib auth app, so that we can get some of the base information that we need for our user. This includes the stuff that Django system uses by default. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do email equals models.email field, and we want to set it unique equal to true. With this field, we're going to actually use this to be our login to use email instead of a username. We also have to set the unique equal to true so that we make sure that every instance of users has a unique email address, so that way we don't get duplicate users trying to log in. We're going to set a field like you would need on a profile, except in this case department. We might want to set the department that each user is in. Then we're going to set the is staff, and we're going to set it to a boolean. This is something so that we can actually access the Django admin later that we'll need, and by default it's actually is staff equals true, so that you don't have to deal with this, but we want to be able to turn this on and off about whether you have access to the admin or not. We're going to set the default to false because we don't want just anyone to be able to access Django admin. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to do username field equals email. This is normally set to the username, string username, because we would use the username as the unique identifier for this object. In this case, the unique identifier is going to be the email, so we use the email address to log in. Finally, we're going to set the required fields, and it takes a list of fields that you want required whenever you're creating a new object. In this case, we want to require department as a demonstration of this requirement of creating a new user. In several places, Django uses two methods on the user object, so we're just going to fill these in, and they're get full name and get short name. We're just going to return the email address and be done with it. So we've gone so far as we've created our demo user object, and this will actually cover a good chunk of our scenarios that we would want to use the user object with. However, just this by itself wouldn't allow us to use the Django admin. And that's a lot of the reason we want to use the Django system is for the Django admin. So in order to get it to work with the Django admin, we need to inherit from the permission mixin class, which adds a few more goodies in there for accessing and interacting with the admin. And then finally, we want to actually be able to create new users with our new information, much like we do with a normal Django object. So with that, we're going to create a new manager, and we're going to set objects equals to demo user manager. So this is setting a custom manager for our model. So if we go above this and we'll do class demo user manager, and we inherit from the base user manager, then we have created our custom demo user manager, and we can customize it how we need it. The problem with using the base user manager, or even the user manager that comes with Django contrib auth, is that it expects a username field. Well, we're not using a username field, so we can't use that, because if we try to create a new user using the manager methods, then it's just going to explode on us. So we need to go ahead and create a couple of new methods. We'll create the create user method, and we're going to pass it in an email, a department since it's required, and password equals none. We're going to set pass for now, and then we're going to create a create super user method, and this is so we can create a super user on the command line or in a few other different ways with Django. Pass it the email, the department, password equals none, just like with create user. These are the two methods that we actually need, And in order to get them to work, we are going to call to a method that we're going to abstract, we're going to refactor out to. We're going to do _create_user. We're going to pass it the email, password, department, and we're doing department equals department because we're going to pass it into a method that takes keyword arguments. And then we're going to call the same method, except we're going to go ahead and add is staff equals true and is super user equals true, saying, hey, both of these things are going to be true for our user because we're creating a super user. So let's go ahead and add that private-ish method to our demo user manager. And there we go. First thing we're doing is we're checking to see if there's an email address set. If there's not, we throw an error. Next, we're going to call a internal method of normalize email to make sure it's a proper email address. Then we're going to get the local model, in this case, demo user. We're going to use the email address that we want and pass it in all the extra fields, like the department, is staff, is super user. Then we're going to set the password, and then we're going to finally save it and return that user object. And that's all that's needed for creating a user and creating a super user and a normal user. This create user method is something I actually yanked out of the Django source code and tweaked a little bit for our needs. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start using it. First thing that we want to do is we want to create some migrations. So let's do our manage.py make migrations and see we have 001 initial.py. This is actually very important because instead of using an abstract user for your project this way and keep it being easy, your demo user or your custom abstract user model that you're going to use needs to be the very first model that you have in your app, in this case the registration app. Otherwise you need to go through a lot of other headache to get everything to work properly because this changes your database structure in a significant way compared to having it with the normal Django contrib auth application. So with that, we have our initial migration and we have it, the user created. So now we're just going to migrate and it's going to run all the migrations and we're kind of ready to go. So let's go ahead and create a super user. We have our email address and notice the department is here and it's being required. And then we're going to set our password. It's just going to be a super simple password. So let's go ahead and run the server and try to log in. If we go to the browser, we'll go into the admin. You can see we're not logged in. And notice it has the email instead of username for the sign-in information. We're going to add our email address, we're going to add our password, and poof, we're logged in. There we go, we're in our admin site. If you notice at the top, we have buddy@buddylindsay.com. That's our email address that we set using, and then that's returning using the get full name. We also have the authentication and authorization application in it showing groups. Notice, however, there are no users available, and that's because we moved our user object out of Django contrib auth and into our registration app. So we'd have to write a custom admin.py and register the models appropriately to be able to view them in the Django admin. So with that, let's go ahead and double check that our user object actually exists by going into the shell. Go to the shell and we're going to do a demo user.objects.all. And there we go. You see we have a query set with the demo user in that query set. And that's it. That's all there is to setting up a custom user with your new projects. If this fits your need, I definitely recommend you give it a shot. But again, like I've said in this video and a previous video, probably 90% of your cases is going to be just fine with a profile object. Thank you and have a great day.